So UFC Fight Night Grasso versus Shevchenko 2 is going to be taking place this weekend. It's going to be a very, very good card that I'm very much looking forward to. Super top heavy with a fantastic main event and a fantastic co-main event as well. But before we do get into that, this intro might be a little bit longer. I'm going to talk about UFC 293 because I was at that card in person. It was my first time going to a card in person since 2017 when I watched Mark Hunt versus Derek Lewis in Auckland, New Zealand. This time I went to Australia for the card and I got to watch Sean Strickland become the champion with my own eyes. It was unbelievable, man. I could not believe what was happening. And then when he knocks down Adesanya in the first round, the whole crowd stood up and started cheering. One thing that was weird though as well was throughout the press conferences and the kind of like the press tour, the media days and whatever, Sean Strickland was the one getting cheered. And then when it came to the actual fight, there were a lot of Adesanya fans that just appeared out of absolutely nowhere. And Adesanya was getting more cheers than Strickland until Strickland won the bout in the end. But dude, it was a good event. It was fun, man. I got to watch Felipe dos Santos debut. If you guys know me and my channel, you will know that Felipe dos Santos is a guy I've been high on for a very, very long time. I actually almost want to say that I've been talking about Felipe dos Santos on my channel for about a year now, because if you do know me, you know that I do keep up with prospects outside of the UFC on the regional scene. Felipe dos Santos was one of those guys I had my eye on, and dude, the stars just aligned, man, that I got to watch him make his debut live. I thought he looked really, really good. I did think that he lost the fight. I mean, from me watching live, I thought that he won the third round, but lost the first two. But if you actually listen to the broadcast throughout, like, I think it's rounds 2 in particular, you can hear me absolutely screaming at him because I'm like, let's go Felipe, you've got him Felipe. And then in the third round I was like, go after him Felipe, you've broken him Felipe. Dude, like, there's no way he didn't hear me. I don't think he speaks English, but my goodness, I was screaming so loud and so often in the crowd when Felipe dos Santos was fighting. I definitely embarrassed my family. They probably won't ever want to sit beside me in an event again. But my goodness, man, I was going to be the one cheering for Felipe because I knew that nobody else was going to. Absolutely love Felipe dos Santos. Aside from that, the card was pretty good. Started off with quite a few finishes. I got to watch Blood Diamond fight as well, which is always going to be an honor. Potentially, he will never fight in the UFC again. So I get to be one of those few people that got to see him fight with my own eyes again. I mean, what a card to go to. Honestly, it wasn't a card that I was super hyped about going to because I didn't think that it was very strong for a pay-per-view, and I still do feel about that on paper. It wasn't that strong for a pay-per-view, but I do think that the card really delivered. We got a Justin Tucker KO. Volkov versus Tuivasa was pretty fun, although it was a pretty dominant performance from Volkov, and the Tuivasa fans around me in the crowd will probably never be the same again. I feel bad for them, man, but honestly, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I was relatively confident Volkov got it done. I think I was like low to medium in confidence, but as soon as the fight kind of got started and Tuivasa was just walking into Volkov straight shots, I was like, yeah, this is not going to be a good night for Tuivasa. But that's a 3-minute intro. I've never done an intro that long before, but the reason why it is so long is because I did want to talk about UFC 293 when I have the opportunity to. But now let's talk about this card. Before we do get into that, I'm just going to go through my We Want Picks. You get a 3-day free trial, sign up with code ARTEM, and you get access to all sorts of premium content on the We Want Picks website. I mean, the amount of people that's going to be adding to that website is expanding all the time. We just added Running Mouth MMA, which is a great YouTube channel and a great podcast as well. You've also got Angelo Jacob, the AI fight doctor as well. And then you got my BetUS link there. Now let's talk about Josefine Knutsson versus Marnic, man. I do apologize for the 4-minute intro, but I wanted to talk about UFC 293. I don't think you can blame me too much about that. This fight, though, started off, I believe the original fight was Cynthia Calvillo versus Elise Reed, and then it became Elise Reed versus Jasmine Lucindo, and then it became Jasmine Lucindo versus Josefine Knutsson, and now it's Josefine Knutsson taking on Marnic, man, and I mean, it's definitely taken quite a bit to get there, but I'm so happy that Josefine Knutsson is going to be getting her debut. I think she's really, really good at fighting, honestly. I picked her to beat Isis Verbeek. I wasn't confident in that pick whatsoever, because I do believe that Isis Verbeek is a UFC level fighter. I know that you might see a 4-2 record now, but former world kickboxing champion, very, very good striker, and Josefine Knutsson was able to look very, very good in that matchup. Hurt Verbeek had opportunities to finish the fight at times, but I think she just wanted to go for the clinch a little bit too much, and that might be a fight IQ issue for Josefine Knutsson, because she is a fantastic striker, 2018 world champion in Muay Thai, got a kickboxing background in her own right as well, just a fantastic striker that I think is going to translate very well over to MMA. I actually was going to pick her to beat Jasmine Lacerda. People called me absolutely crazy for expressing that opinion on Instagram and Twitter, but honestly, I do think that Josefine Knutsson would have beaten Jasmine Lacerda. If you watch Jasmine Lacerda, yes, she did have that pretty close fight with Jasmine Urigi, but the way that Lacerda throws strikes, I'm getting off topic now, it's like this. She just throws hooks, she's very sloppy, she leaves herself very open. I think Knutsson would have exposed that and would have beaten her. I think she beats Marnic Mann. I'm going to be honest as well. I think Knutsson might be able to knock her out. I mean, Marnic Mann got KO'd by Bruna Brazil. In my opinion, she looked really bad in that fight. And she just had her hands low. She was just kind of plodding around a little bit. Just really bad striking defense. And she just left herself open to the head kick. If you look at Josefine Knutsson, she's only got one finish in her entire career. Everything else is a decision. But Jacinta Austin's a very good fighter. Yed Amsio's a very good fighter as well. I actually think we're going to see Josefine Knutsson go out there and knock out Marnic Mann as well. I think Marnic Mann, she's a wrestler. She's a grappler. She's small for the weight class. I think that Josefine Knutsson's takedown defense is going to be good enough, and I also think that Josefine Knutsson's striking is going to be so much better than Marnic Mann's. I think she's just going to be able to knock her out. I think that Josefine Knutsson should be able to go out there and just land on Marnic Mann. Knutsson's a very, very high volume striker. Like, ridiculously high volume striker. I think an accumulation of damage towards the end of the fight, maybe round 2, round 3, is going to be the end for Marnic Mann. I'm going with Knutsson by knockout or TKO due to just accumulation of damage. I think Knutsson's that good. I think at the only age of 27 years old as well, I think Knutsson does have potential to go pretty far in the weight class as well. She has to get past Marnic Mann. I think she does. I'm pretty confident she does. Now we can move on to Charlie Campbell taking on Alex Reyes. Now this is a confident pick, but it shouldn't be. I am pretty confident Charlie Campbell goes out there and wins this fight, and I'm actually going to pick Charlie Campbell to win this fight by round 1 knockout. But the problem with Alex Reyes is this guy has not fought for 6 years. So how are we going to know how good he is? Because that's the problem. Alex Reyes hasn't fought for 6 years. Yes, I can go back and tell you about the Mike Perry fight. It started off relatively slow. You could tell that Alex Reyes was pretty nervous for the fight. And then as soon as the fight kind of got started, Mike Perry gets him in the clinch, knocks him out pretty brutally with a knee. And that's the end of Alex Reyes. You know, he ended up with some really, really bad injuries. It's a shame because I guess in a way, his dream of becoming a professional MMA fighter was kind of taken away from him by outside things like a back injury. I think he had some sort of illness at some point as well. Just a lot of really, really bad things has happened to Alex Reyes. But I can't trust a guy that is almost 37 years old, coming off a 6-year layoff, to come out here and beat Charlie Campbell. Now, I do know that Charlie Campbell's taken this fight on short notice, and yes, there are some red flags about Charlie Campbell's game. He is pretty hittable on the feet. Now, I know that you could just say, oh, he got knocked out by Chris Duncan, so he is hittable on the feet, but in general, he is still pretty hittable on the feet. But the thing about Charlie Campbell is he is actually a pretty technical boxer with a lot of power, and I picked him to beat Chris Duncan. I thought my pick was pretty good. My pick, unfortunately, was really good until it wasn't. He got knocked out by Chris Duncan, but before that, he was just beating on Chris Duncan, man. It was crazy. Knocked out a guy that was relatively decent, 9-5 since then. I think he goes out there on short notice. I think he goes out there and knocks out Alex Reyes in round number 1. I think there's better matchups for Reyes to come back to, man. I don't think this is it. So you gave me Charlie Campbell to win by round 1 KO in this matchup. Now we can move on to Tracy Cortez taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius. This is a tough fight to predict. I'm seeing people on both sides of the pick, I guess you could say. This is a fight which I think that the odds might flip. You've got Tracy Cortez at -130, Jasmine Jasudavicius is +110 on Tapology. But if you go to fight odds, on one sportsbook, Jasmine Jasudavicius is -110, -110. And Jasmine Jasudavicius is -120 on a sportsbook. Tracy Cortez is -120 on another. The odds for this fight are dead even, and I think that they could flip towards Jasmine if more people do put more money on her, as plus money is still available. I am picking Jasmine Jasudavicius, but it's just one of those fights where I don't really know, because the truth is, I really do believe this fight is going to go the distance. I don't think that there's going to be too much debate about that. I don't think Tracy Cortez can finish Jasmine. I don't think Jasmine can finish Tracy Cortez. But it's not really too much of a secret that I don't think Tracy Cortez... Oh man, I'm going to get flamed with the comments for this one. I don't think Tracy Cortez is that good. She's not very good on the feet, but she is a very, very dominant wrestler with strong top control. But the problem is if she can't establish that top control, I think that she's going to be in a little bit of trouble with Jasmine. Now, yes, Jasmine is not the best striker in the world either, because she is also a wrestler. But I think that Jasmine Jasudavicius' wrestling is going to be good enough to defend the takedowns against Tracy Cortez. Maybe get one of her own as well, because Tracy Cortez doesn't look too good when she's the one on her back. And I think Jasmine on the feet can have a lot of success. I thought Tracy Cortez, you know, was going to lose to Melissa Gatto. I will admit that was a really, really bad pick. It was actually kind of hard to watch because Melissa Gatto's fight IQ in that fight was shockingly terrible. But that fight against Justin Kish, you know, Justin Kish won that third round. I think someone scored it 30-27 to Cortez, which is crazy. But Kish knocked her down in the third round. And another thing is as well, this inactivity is crazy to me as well. She's fought 5 times in the last 4 years. 2 times in the last 2.5 years. I don't know what's going on with Tracy Cortez. I don't know why she's fighting not often whatsoever. How much is she getting paid? What is her contract? She must be on crazy money if she's only fighting once every year. This is actually crazy. Jasmine Jasudavicius has fought 5 times in the last 2 years, 2 times in the last 6 months. This is about to be 3 times in the last 6 months. I like the activity. I like the wrestling. I like the striking at Jasmine. I think she can keep the fight on the feet and make Tracy Cortez uncomfortable. So I'm going to go with Jasmine Jasudavicius to win this matchup. Now we move on to Edgar Chairez taking on Daniel Lacerda. I am seeing so many people betting on Daniel Lacerda, and I do understand it. My pick is Edgar Chairez though, but honestly, Daniel Lacerda, I'm seeing people kind of not liking my boy Daniel, you know. Daniel's fun. Daniel is a fun fighter. I'm glad he's got another contract in the UFC, because after his fight against CJ Vergara, I was like, man, I still want to see him fight at least one more time, you know? Like, that was such a fun fight. He almost had CJ Vergara finished. Man, it was unlucky that he didn't get the finish. But Daniel Lacerda, 4-fight losing streak, 4-fight finish losing streak. Hasn't really looked too good in any of these fights, to be honest. But my goodness, it has been a fun ride in the UFC. And I think that the UFC likes him, because he fights often, dude. He's fought 4 times in the last 2 years. And he's been finished every single time. Just keeps coming back for more. It's crazy. I like Daniel Lacerda. He's a fun fighter. I think he trains at Shooter Box now. So he will be getting good training and good training partners with Felipe Dos Santos, who just had a relatively competitive fight with Manel Kape. But Edgar Chairez, I think he's just a little bit better. You know, Edgar Chairez, one thing about him though is you always do have to worry a little bit about that cardio, because he's so big for the weight class. He's 5'7", but he's a pretty big 5'7" for the weight class. He is a good grappler, and he is a pretty good striker. I think that he should be able to kind of just beat Daniel Lacerda in this fight. I know that sounds like a really, really bad breakdown, but I think Daniel Lacerda might actually be the more dangerous fighter. But the thing is with Daniel Lacerda, he just makes so many little mistakes, you know, in the fight. And I think that Edgar Chairez is a good enough fighter to be able to exploit that. I actually think that Edgar Chairez might go to try and take this fight down to the ground here and just use his size difference to kind of bully Daniel Lacerda. I think he might try and bully Daniel Lacerda up against the cage, might take down Daniel Lacerda, try and bully him a little bit on the ground. Lacerda has shown pretty bad fight IQ when it comes to the ground at times. You know, he does get finished a lot when the fight does go down there. Ground and pound finish, knee bar finish, which he literally put himself into. I see Edgar Chairez just kind of just bullying, using that size advantage that he's got over Daniel Lacerda. I'm going to go Chairez to finish Lacerda. I think this is absolutely a either guy can get a finish in this matchup, but I wouldn't be putting my money on Edgar Chairez if I'm betting on this fight. If I'm betting on this fight, I think it's a dog or pass or an under 2.5, but I feel like the under 2.5 is probably super juiced, so maybe that's the fight to avoid. I mean, maybe Daniel Lacerda goes out there and knocks him out, but I am going to go with Edgar Chairez in this matchup. Now we move on. Roman Kopylov taking on Josh Fremd. Pretty confident Roman Kopylov wins this fight. Kopylov's really turned his career around, man. He got into the UFC a few years ago. Got out-grappled by Karl Roberson, which is just a really, really bad look, to be honest. And then he took on Albert Duraev. Gave Albert Duraev a decent amount of issues on the feet, but was still once again able to be taken down. But after that, he knocked out Alessio Di Chirico. He knocked out Punahele Soriano. He knocked out Claudio Ribeiro. And the last year or so for Roman Kopylov has been a very, very good year for him. And I think we're going to see Roman Kopylov get another knockout here. Josh Fremd, he was knocked out by Gregory Rodriguez on the regional scene, but he is a wrestler kind of for the most part. He can strike if he needs to, but he's pretty hittable on the feet. And the thing is, Roman Kopylov is a very good kickboxer, and I think that he's just going to go out there and knock out Josh Fremd. I think that at this point, his takedown defense has improved to be good enough to defend takedowns against Josh Fremd, and Fremd has taken this on short notice. I think once again, Roman Kopylov was meant to fight someone else on short notice, Anthony Hernandez, who was just kind of a better version of Josh Fremd, absolutely dominated Josh Fremd in the fight when he took him on short notice. But the point is, I'm picking Kopylov to win by KO. I'm pretty confident gets it done in the first 2 rounds as well. I think Kopylov's a pretty good fighter. Maybe not a guy that I think could go all the way up to the top 10, but I think Kopylov does have a pretty high ceiling at 185 pounds. Now we move on to Lupita Godinez versus Elise Reed. 2 girls that I'm not that big of a fan of. Now, you might say, why are you not a fan of Lupita Godinez? She's awesome. She fights all the time, this and that. And I agree. I like fighters that fight all the time. I don't mind Lupita Godinez at all, but the problem with Lupita Godinez is I genuinely think that she's getting worse at fighting. The Lupita Godinez that went out there and beat Ariana Canelossi is absolutely, without a doubt in my mind, a better fighter than the fighter that fought Emily Ducote and the fighter that beat Cynthia Calvillo. Absolutely, without a doubt in my mind, Lupita Godinez was better a year ago than she is now. I have absolutely no idea how that's happening, but I think she's getting worse. I just don't know what's happening. I think it's a fight IQ issue. She's not using her really, really good wrestling anymore. She used to come out here and out-wrestle girls that were really, really good grapplers and looked very good. And now she's trying to strike with girls that are better strikers than her. And yes, she's able to get it done, but oh my goodness, her fights are so hard to watch. Do not put any money on Lupita Godinez under any circumstance whatsoever. But with that being said, I wouldn't put money on Elise Reed either. Elise Reed is she's just a bit unlikable. I'm gonna be honest. You can tell that she's very cocky. You can tell that she's very overconfident in her ability. I might just move on from this fight because I don't really like either of these 2 girls, man. I am picking Lupita Godinez here. If Lupita Godinez goes out there and wrestles Elise Reed, she should absolutely dominate this fight. Absolutely, completely destroy Elise Reed on the ground. But if Lupita Godinez is coming into this fight expecting to strike with Elise Reed, I think she can still get it done, but I think it's going to be a long day in the office, and I'm going to be sitting here at my desk watching the fights, pulling my hair out in frustration, because Lupita Godinez has such an obvious way to win, and I just don't know if she takes it. Lupita Godinez, a girl I'm not high on whatsoever. I think she can dominate this fight with the wrestling and grappling. Whether or not she chooses to do it, that's up to her, man. You never know with Lupita Godinez. Her fight IQ might be the worst fight IQ in the UFC. And as I said, I do believe that she is getting worse at fighting. She's looking less and less impressive every time she fights. It is unreal. I don't know how it's happening, but it is happening. And it's something to keep your eye on, because maybe you could bet against Lupita Godinez as a massive underdog in the future, because she is literally getting worse at fighting. I don't know how to explain it, but it's absolutely happening. You gotta watch that Ariane Canelossi fight and then watch her most recent fights. It's 100% true. It has to be. I mean, I don't know what's going on. Now we've got Fernando Padilla taking on Kyle Nelson. I'm seeing a lot of people picking Kyle Nelson. I've got a feeling that it might just be to pick an underdog, because in my opinion, this card is really, really hard to justify picking underdogs for. I mean, the best underdogs in the card, I mean, I'm picking Jasmine Jasudavicius. It's probably Daniel Lacerda and Jasmine Jasudavicius, and the underdog in this, and the main event. I mean, we'll get to those fights later, but I'm going to go Fernando Padilla here. He proved me wrong. He proved me wrong big time. I picked Juliana Rosa to beat him. Fernando Padilla went out there and knocked him out. Knocked him down twice. It was a somewhat early stoppage, but to be honest, Juliana Rosa has been knocked out about 25 times already in his career, so it's probably for the best that the referee stepped in pretty early. But for Kyle Nelson, I don't rate Kyle Nelson that highly, and I am still somewhat surprised that Blake Builder managed to look so terrible against him, because I really thought Blake Builder was going to go out there and out-wrestle Kyle Nelson and kind of just dominate that fight, and Kyle Nelson just beat him up on the feet. And Blake Builder was just so frustrating to watch, because Blake Builder showed terrible fight IQ in that matchup. Just kind of danced around, kind of thought like he was like Cody Garbrandt taking on oh my goodness, I can't remember his name, but just Cody Garbrandt trying to just show off, and it can't do it, man. But anyway, I'm picking Fernando Padilla. I think he knocks out Kyle Nelson. He is a grappler, though. That's the thing about Padilla. And one thing as well I will say is I did pick against Padilla because I didn't know how good he was going to be, because he had taken 2 years off. He's pretty good. He went out there, Julian Rosa. He beat Juliana Rosa. Another thing as well I'm going to say about Padilla, he's been on the roster for a very long time. He was actually meant to fight in 2021, but I think he got injured or something happened, and he took so much time off. And now he's in the UFC, and I think he's able to beat Kyle Nelson. I would say, I think Julian Erosa would beat Cole Nelson relatively easily. So if you really want to do a little bit of MMA math, you can kind of do it there. I think Fernando Padilla knocks out Cole Nelson. I don't rate Cole Nelson too highly. I think he's pretty slow on the feet. Padilla's pretty slick on the feet. He's good on the ground as well. I think he can kind of just beat Nelson kind of everywhere this fight goes, to be honest. Now we move on to Daniel Zellhuber taking on Christos Giagos. I'm picking Daniel Zellhuber in this matchup. I think Daniel Zellhuber is actually a really good fighter. But it is, you gotta mention it, man. That Trey Ogden performance is the biggest red flag that I think we're ever going to see out of a fighter, especially in his debut. He went in there after taking a year off. I think the reason why he took a year off was because he was still studying at the time, and he finished his degree. So now I believe he's training full time. I could be incorrect on that. But he went out there against Trey Ogden and lost a striking match to Trey Ogden, who's he's just a terrible striker. And Daniel Zellhuber froze against him and didn't win, to be honest. And then he went out there against Lando Venado, and that fight was pretty close. Zellhuber had so much success at the start, though. Knocked down Lando Venado, hurt Lando Venado. The thing about Christos Giagos is, one thing I'll give him respect for is this guy does not back away from a challenge. He fights some of the best guys in the world. You know, his losses are to Thiago Moises and Arman Sarukian. Before that, you know, he's not really beating the best guys. But he's not afraid of fighting top guys. And the thing about Christos Giagos is as well is he beats the lower tier fighters. If you look at his wins, it's Carlton Minus, it's Sean Soriano, and it's Ricky Glenn, who looks terrible in that fight as well. And the losses are to really good guys. So this is probably going to tell us just in general where Daniel Zellhuber is in the level of lightweights. Because if he can get past Christos Giagos, he might have a very bright future ahead of him at only 24 years old. But if he loses to Christos Giagos, then we're going to know that Zellhuber may be just a little bit of a fraud, and he's going to need a little bit more time, maybe just not ready for the UFC. But I was too high on Zellhuber. After he beat Lucas Almeida, I was like, yeah, this guy's going far. And then he lost to Trey Ogden, and now I just don't know what to think, because I was so sad when he lost to Trey Ogden. I'm going to pick Daniel Zellhuber. I still think he's a really good fighter. I think he just beats Giagos up on the feet, kind of keeps the fight on the feet. But this is a fight to, I would just say, be wary of. Stay away from it and just kind of watch it and see how good Daniel Zellhuber is. I'm picking Raul Rosas Jr. to beat Terrence Mitchell as well. Now, the red flags have been put up for Raul Rosas Jr. And I'm going to be honest, I should have seen it coming. I should have seen him losing to Christian Rodriguez coming, because Christian Rodriguez, I thought that he was going to be able to do it, but I still picked Raul Rosas Jr. anyway. I think I threw up that Christian Rodriguez is a very, very good fighter, but I think that Raul Rosas Jr. was able to out-wrestle and out-grapple him. And the thing is, Raul Rosas Jr. did out-wrestle and out-grapple him for a round, and then he gassed out. I thought that his grappling was going to be good enough, because it was actually quite annoying to watch the fight where he completely gassed out against C-Rod in the second round. But you saw him go a pretty hard 3 rounds against Mano Gutierrez. But that's the thing about Raul Rosas Jr. If you give this guy no adversity, no defense, Raul Rosas Jr. is going to have cardio for days, and he is going to look really, really good. But if you give Raul Rosas Jr. a bit of adversity, if you're able to defend some takedowns, if you're able to put him in a couple of bad spots, then maybe Raul Rosas Jr. is going to crumble like he did against Christian Rodriguez, sorry. Because that is one thing that I did say was Raul Rosas Jr., he has never seen adversity in his MMA career at all. He had dominated every single opponent he fought. He dominated Jay Perrin. He dominated the fight on Dana White's Contender Series against Mano Gutierrez, which was just a pre-made matchup for him. I picked Raul Rosas Jr. in that matchup because I said this is a grappler versus grappler fight, and Raul Rosas Jr. is a better grappler than Mano Gutierrez. And that was true. I mean, anyone that did tape would have picked Raul Rosas Jr. in that matchup. But anyway, he's taking on Terrence Mitchell. The thing about Terrence Mitchell is he's also a grappler for the most part. He can strike, but he's not the best striker in the world. He could maybe have success against Raul Rosas Jr. on the feet. But I think that Raul Rosas Jr. is going to do what he always does. He's going to shoot for takedowns within the first 20 seconds of the fight. And to be honest with you, I actually think that he's able to get him against Terrence Mitchell in this matchup. I think Raul Rosas Jr. should be relatively safe on the ground as well if he can avoid some submissions against Terrence Mitchell. I thought Terrence Mitchell actually looked pretty good against Cameron Saman. He was able to defend some positions. He was able to avoid a lot of tough positions from Cameron Saman. And Cameron Saman is a really good prospect himself. But I'm going to go with Raul Rosas Jr. in this fight. I think that he is able to get the takedowns. I think that he is able to dominate with the grappling. I think this is a good fight for him. I think that UFC maybe did themselves a little bit of a disservice throwing Raul Rosas Jr. in the deep end against C-Rod. Once again, I will admit I did pick Christian Rodriguez to lose. I thought that Raul Rosas Jr. was going to beat him, but I think that hindsight's always 20/20, man. And I think the UFC should have kind of slowed their roll a little bit with Raul. But I think Raul's still got a very, very bright future ahead of him. This guy's not even 19 years old yet. So, I mean, good for him. I'm happy for Raul Rosas Jr. But I think this might be a good thing for him as well. Because he was talking about being a 3-weight world champion. Was talking about being the youngest champion in the world. Was talking about, even on his Dana White's Contender Series fight, he was talking about how he can beat Aljo and all this. And I was like, oh man, you know, like, I understand that you're 18 years old, but someone's got to tell you, man. Someone's got to tell you. But, yeah, no, I think Raul Rosas Jr. beats Terence Mitchell. I think he gets a finish in the first 2 rounds as well. Then we can move on to Kevin Holland versus Jack Della Maddalena. I am picking Jack Della Maddalena in this matchup. I'm not too sure if he is the underdog. I think he might be a slight favorite right now. But the odds for this fight are forever changing. And to be honest with you guys, I think the value is just on whoever you can get decent plus money on. I've seen people getting pretty wide odds. I believe it was JDM that opened as a pretty big underdog. I think some people got like plus 150 on JDM or something, which is pretty crazy. I think they're pretty good odds to nab if you got them. But I think this is going to be a mostly striking matchup. And yes, I understand that you could absolutely justify a Kevin Holland pick, especially with how bad, and well, let's be honest, especially with how bad Jack Della Maddalena looked in his fight against Basil Hafez. But I like the fact that he's quickly turning around. I think he's trying to shake off the cobwebs, make people forget about that fight, and take on Kevin Holland, who is a very good fighter himself. But at the end of the day, I think the mindset for JDM is a lot different. I think the mindset for JDM is he wants to be the champion. Kevin Holland, I'm sure he wants to be a champion himself, but he is very vocal about how he doesn't really care about the belt. He just wants the money. I think JDM is going to come into this fight really trying to prove a point, and I think he's going to take it seriously. Now, the thing is, though, he did only fight Basil Hafez a month ago, and that's not going to give him a lot of time to prepare for Kevin Holland. It's not going to give him a lot of time to fix a lot of the holes that were in that game. Now, takedown defense wasn't necessarily too much of a worry, because I think Basil Hafez attempted like 20 takedowns. He did get like 7 of them, but it's worth noting that JDM was just pulling guillotine all the time, which is just a massive red flag as well, I know. But as I said, I don't think Kevin Holland is going to try and wrestle and grapple JDM. That's not really what Kevin Holland does, you know, he just tries to strike with JDM. I think JDM as well, I think JDM's going to be able to pick his spots, man. Kind of like how he has in the past when he wasn't fighting Basil. Just really, really good counter-striking. Very, very good eyes in the pocket. Very, very good KO power. JDM's rise has been rapid. I do think it does continue against Kevin Holland. But yes, Kevin Holland can use that range to kind of stay away from JDM. But the thing is, JDM closes the distance so well with his boxing. And yes, Kevin Holland probably could go out there and wrestle and grapple against JDM, but can you trust him to do that? In my opinion, you can't. In my opinion, you can't trust him to go out and do that. And it's worth noting as well, like, yes, he beat Michael Chiesa, but of course he beat Michael Chiesa. Michael Chiesa is terrible at fighting, I'm just going to say it. And you beat Santiago Ponzinibbio, but man, Ponzinibbio was an absolute beast in his prime, but at this point, Ponzinibbio, he has slowed down a little bit. I know he looks pretty good in his fight against Jeff Neal, but Ponzinibbio is still slowing down a little bit in his career. I think that JDM would have knocked out Ponzinibbio in the first round, and I think he would have knocked out Chiesa in the first rounds. I know that Holland submitted him pretty easily, but you kind of get the point. I'm going to go JDM. I'm going to go JDM by KO as well. I think that this is going to be a pretty good opportunity for JDM to get a very good win. Now we can move on to the main event. It's going to be Elise Grasso taking on Valentina Shevchenko in the rematch. This is a really, really hard fight to call, and my official pick is what I thought was just going to be the most intelligent pick. I am going to do it. I am picking Valentina Shevchenko to win this fight. But you can tell I'm not confident at all. Now, I am going to say it. I think everyone else was kind of on the same page. I think there were a couple people on the Grasso side. I have a friend that was on the Grasso side. He picked Grasso to win by submission, which is crazy. But good for him. But my goodness, dude. I think that Valentina Shevchenko is the smart pick to make. And I think that she can win this fight. I think that Valentina Shevchenko, out of the 2 fighters from their first fight, Shevchenko is the one that can make the most adjustments to win the fight. And I think the way that she can make those adjustments is just cut out the spinning kicks, because Grasso prepared for them. Grasso said that she prepared for them and jumping on the back in the spin. So just cut out the spinning kicks and use a little bit more wrestling, because yes, Shevchenko, it was a little bit boring, and yes, Shevchenko wasn't doing a lot when she was on top. But when Alexa Grasso does get taken down, she does struggle to get up a bit. When she gets taken down, it's not necessarily like the end. It's not like she's never going to get up, but she does struggle to get up. And Alexa Grasso, it's almost like she does kind of accept being put on her back. She is a good grappler, but, you know, there's definitely something that's worth noting, that Shevchenko could come out here with a very, very heavy wrestling game plan. I think she could beat Alexa Grasso using that very heavy wrestling game plan. Grasso, it is worth noting, in the first round, did control the fight on the feet. I did score that fight for Grasso. I think many people out there did score that fight for Grasso in the first round. But once again, Shevchenko landed more strikes than her in that matchup. But Grasso did, she landed more strikes than her in the first round, I was trying to say, sorry. But yes, Grasso did control that round. Yes, Grasso did land a better shots. I just think that Shevchenko is the one that is able to make the better adjustments in the fight. I think that Shevchenko is the one that can prepare a little bit differently. She can just cut out the spinning attacks. She can be the one to incorporate a little bit more wrestling. If I was going to pick Alexa Grasso, what I would be picking Alexa Grasso based on would be trusting the fact that Alexa Grasso can both defend the takedowns that Shevchenko is 100% going to be coming into this matchup using, and secondly, can she outstrike Shevchenko on the feet as well? Because the thing is, even if Alexa Grasso does defend the takedowns against Valentina Shevchenko, she still has to be able to outstrike her for 3 out of 5 rounds. I do understand their first fight was arguably going to be 2-2 going into the 5th if it didn't make it to the 5th, but it was 2-1 Shevchenko, and in rounds 2 and 3, I think it was relatively clear Shevchenko. I think that Shevchenko can come out here and win a decision against Grasso, make it pretty boring. Once again, though, I will say it, if Grasso wins this fight, I will not be that surprised, but the problem is, I think that Grasso is going to have to go through quite a bit of adversity if she does want to beat Shevchenko here. I think Shevchenko has the option to strike with Grasso, but I think that's the path of least resistance. Absolutely not. I think that Shevchenko is a very, very good option and a potentially perfect game plan to both mix in a very, very good striking against Grasso with her wrestling as well, which she was having success in the first fight. So I'm going to go with Shevchenko. I think that it's just the smarter pick to make. I think picking Grasso is more fun, but I am going to go with Shevchenko. I do think Shevchenko wins by decision. I don't think it's going to be a fun fight whatsoever, but I think Shevchenko does win. I think that she can have more options in this matchup, so I'm going to go with what I think is the smart pick, and I'm going to go with Valentina Shevchenko to reclaim the title against Grasso. But one thing I will say, though, is if Shevchenko does fight against Erin Blanchfield, honestly, I'm going to be honest, I think Shevchenko beats Blanchfield as well. I mean, I thought Blanchfield looked really, really bad against Taila Santos. So, yeah, I think that Shevchenko might be able to beat Blanchfield as well. I mean, that's definitely a conversation for another day. She's got to get past Grasso first. I think if she gets past Grasso, I think she should be able to add to her legacy. If Grasso gets past Shevchenko, though, for a second time, we're going to start having some very real conversations, because if Grasso can keep defending that belt, I understand that Shevchenko has left an absolutely ridiculous legacy at 125, but at the end of the day, Alexa Grasso's just turned 30 years old. She's a very young champion, so if Alexa Grasso can go out there, beat Shevchenko twice, and then beat Manon Fiorot, and beat Erin Blanchfield, and beat maybe like 2-3 more contenders, we're having a real conversation there, because I think that Valentina, she defended her about 5 times, or was it more than that? If it was more than that, then I think that we're going to need a little bit more out of Grasso. But at the end of the day, Shevchenko, I mean, she's left the fantastic legacy at 125. It's going to be very, very hard to top. But I think that Grasso, I mean, if Grasso can go out there and beat Valentina Shevchenko, defend the takedowns and outstrike her, I'll probably pick Grasso to beat Blanchfield, you know. In fact, I might even pick Grasso to beat Manon Fiorot as well. I think that Grasso's got a pretty good ceiling, but she has to get past Shevchenko. I'm picking her not to. I'm picking Valentina Shevchenko to win this fight. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.